Today's extended narration focuses on the presidency of Andrew Jackson, the 7th President of the United States. This is not an opinion, and it is not a comparison. It is a continuous, documented historical account. The purpose of this narration is to describe the political decisions of the early 19th century United States and their human consequences. This period marked rapid territorial expansion, growing state power, and increasing pressure on populations who had lived on the land for generations. Between 1800 and 1830, the population of the United States grew rapidly. Agricultural expansion, cotton cultivation, and the creation of new states increased demand for land, especially in the southern and southeastern regions. These regions were home to Native American nations, including the Cherokee, Choctaw, Creek, Chickasaw, and Seminole. They maintained established societies, systems of governance, and agricultural practices. Many of these nations had formal treaties with the United States government recognizing their land rights. Andrew Jackson was born in 1767 and grew up in frontier regions shaped by violence and conflict. He gained national recognition through military service, particularly after the War of 1812. His military reputation became the foundation of his political career. In the election of 1828, he presented himself as a representative of the common citizen. He won the presidency with strong popular support. Andrew Jackson believed that the president should hold strong executive authority. He viewed the presidency as the direct voice of the people, superior to Congress and the courts. During his administration, the use of presidential veto power increased significantly. This approach transformed the office of the president into a more dominant force within the federal government. This philosophy of power directly influenced later policy decisions. Land in the southeastern United States became increasingly valuable due to cotton farming and economic growth. Much of this land remained under the legal ownership of Native American nations. Despite existing treaties, state governments began to challenge native land rights. Pressure mounted to remove indigenous populations from these territories. In 1830, the United States Congress passed the Indian Removal Act. This law authorized the president to negotiate treaties to relocate Native American tribes from eastern lands to territories west of the Mississippi River. Although the language of the law suggested voluntary relocation, the reality was far more coercive. Political pressure, threats, and military force were frequently used. Andrew Jackson signed the act into law and directed its enforcement. Native American nations sought protection through the judicial system. The United States Supreme Court recognized their rights to ancestral lands. However, the Jackson administration did not enforce these rulings. This refusal demonstrated the willingness of the executive branch to disregard judicial authority. At this point, the groundwork was laid for one of the most painful chapters in American history. After the Indian Removal Act became law, its enforcement moved quickly from legal framework to physical action. Federal authorities and state governments coordinated efforts to clear Native American populations from eastern territories. Initial promises were made: fertile land in the West, protection, and a chance to rebuild life. In practice, these promises were not supported by adequate planning or resources. Tribes that refused to relocate voluntarily faced increasing pressure. Legal protections were stripped away. Settlers occupied native lands. Daily life became deliberately unbearable. In many cases, military forces were deployed. Villages were surrounded. Families were given little notice to abandon their homes. The Cherokee Nation pursued resistance through legal and political means. They established a written constitution, courts, and a structured government. Although the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Cherokee land rights, the ruling was ignored in practice. Encroachment on Cherokee territory continued without restraint. The moment of removal. In 1838, mass forced removals of the Cherokee people began. Families were taken from their homes under armed supervision. Many were unable to gather adequate clothing, food, or supplies. Children, the elderly, and the sick were forced to travel together without exception. Thousands were marched westward in organized groups. Food supplies were insufficient. Clean water and medical care were nearly non-existent. Cold weather, rain, and disease spread rapidly. Deaths began occurring along the route. Historical records indicate that approximately 4,000 Cherokee people died during the forced migration. Many causes of death included starvation, pneumonia, dysentery, and physical exhaustion. Many bodies were buried along the trail. Others were left without burial due to the conditions. The removals caused profound social collapse. Families were separated, children lost parents, elders were left completely dependent. The social fabric of entire nations was torn apart. The name, Trail of Tears? This forced migration became known as the Trail of Tears. The name was not symbolic or poetic. It emerged directly from lived experience and recorded suffering. The suffering of Native American communities did not end after reaching Western territories. The lands promised to them were often infertile or insufficient for sustainable living. Food supplies were inconsistent. Disease spread rapidly in unfamiliar environments. Many families continued to lose members even after relocation. Federal support and long-term resettlement planning were largely inadequate. During Andrew Jackson's presidency, the Second Bank of the United States was dismantled. This action significantly altered the nation's financial system. Credit became less regulated. Economic instability increased. The effects of this decision later contributed to widespread financial hardship. These economic consequences affected ordinary citizens across the country. Slavery. Andrew Jackson was a slave owner. His administration did not introduce policies aimed at restricting or ending slavery. At the time, the Southern economy relied heavily on enslaved labor. The federal government allowed this system to continue unchanged. This inaction laid the groundwork for future national conflict. Jackson's presidency marked a major expansion of executive authority. He used the presidential veto more frequently than his predecessors. The office of the president became a more powerful institution. At the same time, judicial authority and protections for vulnerable populations were weakened. Long-term impact. The forced removal of Native Americans facilitated territorial expansion of the United States. However, this expansion came at an immense human cost. These events later influenced Native American rights movements and legal challenges. They remain a lasting wound in American historical memory. Modern historians do not view Andrew Jackson in a single dimension. His leadership, popularity, and decisions are examined together. From the perspective of Native American communities, his presidency is recorded as a period of profound suffering and loss. Conclusion. This one-hour narration is not driven by emotion. It is a continuous presentation of documented history. Andrew Jackson's presidency played a significant role in shaping the United States. But for many people, it was a time defined by displacement, hardship, and irreversible loss. History preserves these consequences, so they are not forgotten. Don't just watch, subscribe, and join the journey.